First of all, I'd like to say that all the classes today are dedicated in memory of Mr. Stanley Chera by their family. It should be L'ilui nishmato, as well as for all the people who have passed away from coronavirus, and for anyone who's ill, it should be for refuah shelama for them as well. Okay, we're ready to start. Let's play. Okay. We're going to be analyzing Mizmor Kuf Kaf Vav, known as Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Hashem. We'll see, based off of the actual text, why this is the Mizmor that we've chosen to analyze, but just on the surface, this Mizmor has been added into the service. I'm not sure how many communities in America do it, but in Israel, there's an additional service on Yom Haasmaut night where they actually sing this Mizmor to the tune of Hatikva, and it's a really beautiful Mizmor. And I don't want to go too in depth. We're not going to be doing any crazy chidushim. We only have 30 minutes, but I just want to go through it and try and understand it. We're certainly not going to be able to cover everything, but hopefully we can just gain an appreciation for it, and through that, Yom Haasmaut. Before we dive into the Mizmor, though, just a note on Yom Haasmaut in general. It's generally a happy day, but it's actually an extremely serious day. I know maybe in other countries, the Independence Day is a time for maybe partying and whatnot. In Israel, it's the day after Yom HaZikaron, and it's a very it's definitely a time for happiness, but it also is certainly contrasted with the stark reality and understanding of what this country means to us and what our life would be like without it. So with that, I'd like to start with something that's a little bit chilling, but I think extremely important for us to gain some perspective. This is a speech written and given in a synagogue in Krakow in 1920 by Rabbi Yehoshua Than. I was in this synagogue last year, and it's massive. It's one of many synagogues in Krakow, and this was what he said in 1920, right after World War I, while all the countries of the world were sort of rebuilding themselves, and different countries were gaining independence. And he said this on Simchat Torah. Brothers, we are about to begin Bereshit. New worlds are emerging and being created. New life is being founded. With great enthusiasm, all the oppressed nations are rising up to build their homes in their land. And even the Jewish people have been invited like bridesmaids to the wedding. And they said to us, get up and make it happen. And my desire is that this calling will sink deep into your hearts, and it is upon you to understand, to recognize, and to value this great historical moment. He's talking about going to Israel and starting to help build the state. And if God forbid you allow this opportunity, which we have been given to pass, you should know, the men amongst you, Bet Israel, more importantly the women, Bet Yaakov, you the mothers blessed with the sense of what the future holds, and who certainly sense what can be expected for your children. If your ears refuse to hear, and if your hearts are like stone and do not feel, then I will tell you what the future will hold. All the nations of the world together will build their homes and reestablish their ruins. We will remain amongst them, spread out throughout them, and war will once again come to the world, greater than the first and more terrible than the first. Not tomorrow and not the following day will this war happen, maybe in 18 or 20 years. He's writing this in 1920. And the hatred of the Jews will not be limited to Galicia and Poland alone. Rather, within each nation, there will arise great anti-Semites, and the great nations will give birth to the greatest anti-Semites, greater than their nations have produced. The hatred of Jews will spread throughout the world from end to end. By then, you will be bubbies and zadis, grandparents and grandparents, and your grandchildren will be rolling, slaughtered. And he continues to describe what he foresees in really terrible detail, and obviously we know, unfortunately, he was all too right. And I think that's something that's very important to keep in mind when celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut, is that what we're celebrating on the most fundamental, basic level is just our right to live, our right to control our own fate as the nation of Israel, as the Jewish people, and not to be subject to anti-Semites around the world and to people who seek to destroy us. And through that, hopefully that will, only increase our happiness and allow us to appreciate the amazing gift that we have in the country of Israel. Now, obviously, I don't mean to, equate or make any sort of theological claim that Israel justifies the Holocaust or anything like that. So just don't get confused. Okay, now moving on to the Mizmor. The Mizmor, we'll do a quick read and translation, and then we'll get in, pasuk by pasuk. So we start off, Shir HaMa'alot Beshuv Adonai et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholmi. A song of ascents, when God returns the captives of Sion, we were like dreamers. Now, some of you may take objection to this translation. That's fine. It's my translation. There are a lot of, we'll say ambiguous words or tenses and future, past, present. I translate it this way on purpose. Like I said, we're not going to get into a lot of depth here in terms of all the different variations. Az yimale sechok pinu ulshonenu rina, az yomru bagoim higdil Adonai la'asot imela. At that time, our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues filled with joyous song. At that time, the nations declared, God has done great things for these people. Higdil Adonai la'asot imanu hayinu simechin. And we will then declare, God has done great things for us. We were rejoicing. Shuva Adonai et shivitenu ka'afikim ba'negev. God, please return our captivity like the channels in the Negev. Just to explain this a little bit, the Negev is the part of Israel where it's essentially desert, and what happens is that if there's a rain, even if it's far away, within several minutes there could be extreme flash floods in the Negev. So the psalmist is praying that our return to Israel should be like, first of all, in the great strength and power as these flash floods, but also as quick and as without warning that these flash floods are like. Hazorim b'dim'ah berina yiksoru. Those who sow in tears will reap in joyous song. Haloch yelechu b'cho noseh meshech hazara bo yavo berina noseh alumotav. He who went out weeping, carrying a load of seed, shall surely come back in joyous song, carrying his sheaves. Right? If you saw the picture in the beginning, that's where this is from. Okay, now we'll speak a little bit about each pasuk. So first of all, the opening, Shir HaMa'alot. Shir HaMa'alot is not part of the text itself. This is, all throughout Tehillim we have this. The fancy word is a superscripture, where it's basically a heading for the psalm itself. Shir HaMa'alot, there are 15 psalms in Tehillim. They're back to back. This one, Mizmor Kuf Kaf Vav, is the 7th. So we know in terms of, creation of the world, the 7th is the completion and is the culmination. But at the same time, 7th also represents transition, because we know that, for example, in this week's parasha, you move from being tameh to tahor after a 7 days period of time. And we'll see that, 7 out of 15 would represent the transition from one side of the, symmetrical number to the other side. So meaning once you cross the 7th, you're now on the other side. So what does the word Shir HaMa'alot mean? So there are different interpretations. Each one has their advantages and disadvantages. So one of the most common explanations is that it's, ma'alot meaning coming up. And these 15 psalms were sang by the people, the Aliyah L'Regel, the people coming up to Jerusalem to bring their korbanot. Another possibility is that the Gemara says that the 15 steps in the Beit HaMikdash were created, meaning there were 15 steps separating the Ezrat Israel to the Ezrat Kohanim, basically the division between where every Jewish man could go and only the Kohanim could go. And there were 15 steps, each step paralleled for one of the Shir HaMa'alot. The other interpretation is that Shir HaMa'alot is just a type of song. It's like a directive for the choir how to sing this song. This Mizmor Kuf Kavav is recited by Ashkenazim after Birkat Hamazon on Shabbat and holidays. During the week, they recite Al Naharot Bavel, which we're going to see is really the antithesis to Mizmor Kuf Kavav, our Mizmor. And Sfaradim, we say it on Mincha Tisha B'Av, and again, in contrast to what we say during Tisha B'Av, which is Al Naharot Bavel. They're in contrast to each other. So we'll start looking a little bit in depth. Shira Ma'alot B'Shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholmin. We have at the end of Pasuk Aleph, we have this idea of we were like dreamers. And then at the end of Pasuk Gimal, we have Higdil Adonai Lasot Imenu Hayinu Semechim. And this idea of closing off the Pasuk as Hayinu Kecholmim and then Hayinu Semechim has led almost all interpreters to understand that this Mizmor, its 6 Pesukim, is broken down into 2 sections, 3 and 3. And the connection of Hayinu Kecholmin and Hayinu Semechim essentially is saying that our dreams have come true. Now, there are 2 interpretations of what it means that we were like dreamers. I think both of them, there's no way to really prove it, but I think they both have something really important in common. So let's discuss both of them. One of them is saying that when we got to Zion, our life was so great, it was like a dream. It was like an amazing dream. The other one is saying, which seemingly is how we would all read it if we were just, reading it firsthand. The other one is saying that we were like dreamers means when we got to Zion and we were living in Israel, our life before that was just, we realized that our life before that was a dream. Our life now is real life, but really what was in the past was just a dream. And they're both essentially saying that the reality of returning to Israel, the reality of living in that way, is a fundamentally different type of life. It's the contrast between real life and a dream. And like I said, it's in contrast to Al Naharot Bavel, when we say in Pasuk Bet, Az yimales chok pinu ulshonenu rida, Az yomru bagoim higdil Adonai la'asot imele, that the nations of the world are going to recognize the greatness that God has done for us. In Al Naharot Bavel, where we're singing or we're lamenting our exile, the nations of the world are mocking us. They're asking us to, in a mocking way, to play songs from Zion. And here, we're the ones singing, and they're the ones recognizing the greatness. We'll see more contrast to Al Naharot Bavel right now. In Pasuk Bet, we say, Az yimale sechok pinu ulshonenu rina. Our mouths will be filled with laughter. And if we go back to the first 2 times in the Tanach where we have a positive laughter, there by Abraham and Yitzchak, and then later Sarah and Yitzchak. Sarah's original laughter is not seen in the most positive light, but the second time it is. And we see 2 common themes about this laughter. One is the extraordinary nature of what's taken place. There was a promise that seemed impossible to accomplish. It just seemed out of the realm of possibilities. And then it happened against all odds. And Abraham's reaction to that is Vayipol Abraham al panav vayischak, and he lets out this great laughter of just the seeming impossibility of it. And then we have Sarah saying, Vatomer Sarah sechok, asali Elohim kol hashomea isa hakli. She's saying, God has made this laughter for me. And why? Because of the next pasuk. Vatomer, she said, Mi milela Abraham henika banim Sarah. Who would have thought that we would be telling Abraham that Sarah will be nursing children? And there we see that what Sarah is saying is the element of laughter is the fact that the people around her, everyone around her, is going to look at her and be like, how is that possible? And we see both of these elements in these 2 pesukim, that we will be laughing because the promise that has been fulfilled to us is so out of the realm of what we thought possible, and also because the nations of the world are going to look at us and say, wow, I can't believe it. Now, if we look to the second half, the second piece of that, Ulshonenu Rina, whereas in Al Naharot Bavel we say, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini, if I forget Jerusalem, let my right hand forget. And Tidbak lishoni lechiki, let my tongue shall stick to the roof of my mouth. Im lo ezkerechi, if I don't remember Jerusalem. Here, instead of our tongue being stuck to the roof of our mouth, we have our tongue being filled with praise. And obviously you can only sing and express praise with your tongue not being stuck to your mouth. Now we go to the second half of the Mizmor, Pesukim Daled through Vav. Here we have a prayer from the psalmist saying, Shuva Adonai et shivitenu ka'afikim b'negev. Please, whoever hasn't yet come, please God, allow them to come back. Hazorim b'dim'a berina yiksoru. Let those who are sowing in tears, let them reap in happiness. Now, what exactly is the connection between Pasuk He and Pasuk Vav, where he sort of expands on this idea of planting in tears and reaping in happiness? He says, Haloch yelechu bachor noseh meshech hazara bo yavo brina noseh alumotav. This is a prayer for the future, and it seems to be that the psalmist here is making a connection between the cycle of agriculture and the cycle of Jewish history that he hopes will happen, which is the same way a person will plant, and at the time he's planting, he doesn't know what's going to be in the future, but he may have faith that the rain is going to come and things are going to be okay. So too, the people of Israel shall, even though they're in the galut, even though they're in exile, and it seems like they're planting their lives there and they're crying, they should really know that eventually they're going to come back and sing with their metaphorical sheaves. It's also probably an encouragement for more people to come, saying, I know what you're thinking. Life over here is not like your comfortable life over there. It's very difficult. And I know you're going to come here and you're going to have to really put in a lot of effort. And if you read about in modern Jewish history in the early 20th century, what the people who went to go settle the land of Israel dealt with in terms of planting and just, irrigating swamps. And it's an amazing feat that they were able to do. And these Pisukim, I'm sure, were with them in their minds. Before we do this, I have to just give a shout out to Rabbi Yitzchak Shalom, who pointed out these two allusions, and they're really, right there in the text. So we have the word alumotav, which is the sheaves, and that word only appears in one other place in all of Tanach, and it is with the story of Yosef. So we know that he tells his brothers, Shim'una hachalom hazeh asher chalamti, listen to this dream that I have. And we have in our Mizmor, we were like dreamers. And then what does he tell them? V'hinei anachnu me'alimim alumim. We were putting together sheaves of wheat. And then obviously he tells them the rest of their dreams. Now, why would the psalmist be making an explicit reference to Yosef? It seems to be pretty simple. Yosef, of every character in Tanakh, was the person who thrived the most when he was outside of his homeland. He was this most powerful man outside in Galut, in exile, and yet nonetheless, at the end of his life, he gives over the promise to his brothers and their children that God will remember you and will bring you back to Israel, and commands them to please bring my bones back to Israel. Meaning, no matter how successful he was, he never lost the desire to go back, never lost the giving over of the hope of one day returning. The next allusion in this Mizmor is to Amos. Amos, the last words of Amos, which otherwise is a very harsh and critical sefer in Tanakh of the Jewish people, is we have the word Meshech Hazara in our Mishnah, the sack of the seeds, and the only other time that appears is in Amos. And here it is on the left side, his last prophecy. He says, Hinei yamim ba'im, behold, the days are coming, Nu'um Hashem, says God. V'nigash choresh b'kotzer, the reaper and the person who is plowing and the person who is gathering, we're going to bump into each other. That's how much produce there's going to be. V'dorech hanavim, and the one who's crushing the wine, v'moshech hazara, is going to bump into the person who's planting the seeds, meaning the time of harvest and the time of planting are just going to be rolling over one into the other. V'hitifu he'arim asis, and the mountains themselves are going to be giving over wine. And all the valleys are going to melt. V'shavti et shevut ami Yisrael. And here's the other connection with our Mizmor. And I will return the captivity of my people Israel. Ubanu arim nishamot v'yashavo. And they will rebuild desolate cities and they will dwell in them. Anyone who's been to Israel recently, this is happening. This is taking place now. V'nateu cheramim, and they will plant vineyards. V'shatu et yinam, and they will drink their wine. Ve'asu ganot ve'achelu et prihem, and they will make gardens and they will eat of their fruits. Untatem al admatam, and I will plant them on their land. V'lo yinateshu od, and I will not disperse them anymore. Me'alad matam asher natati lahem amar Adonai Elohecha. This is how the book of Amos closes, with a promise that when we return, we will no longer be exiled off. So I don't think I have to really mention anything explicit about the implications this has for Yom Haasmaut. I think it's pretty obvious why we read this. I think it's pretty obvious, how this connects. But just to put it down on paper, the return to Zion is a fulfillment of an extraordinary promise which will be recognized by the world around us, a dream come true. The fulfillment of that promise will show us that our life outside of Zion was all just a dream, and that the same way the natural agricultural cycle will bring us our harvest, despite our tears at the time of planting, so too our redemption is the completion of our natural cycle as a people, despite the hardships of exile. Now, we are living during the times of the fulfillment of the prophecies of Amos, to which the author of our Psalms hinted as being the beginning of the redemption. And I want to just, we're talking about, dreaming and having that dream come to fruition. And just a little thought experiment. If you were to go back 125 years in history, maybe 150, it could definitely be argued that the two best places for a Jewish person to be at that time were Germany and Syria. It's pretty arguable that that was the case. And I don't have to tell you now that obviously Germany, we know what happened there, and Syria obviously as well. And I just, to have this sort of perspective on history as a whole, but specifically our history as a people, is to understand that the times we're living in is unprecedented in our history. It is a time where to say the word privilege, or to say the word zechut or merit, or to say anything of that, is to fall far, far short of the recognition we have to have towards the state of Israel. And I want to just end off by playing this clip, because as say as Syrian Jewry, if you were to tell someone that the oldest Syrian shul in the world 150 years ago that would be operating would be in Jerusalem, Israel, they would either think you're crazy because the shul wouldn't be located in Syria, or they would think you're crazy because they would ask you, what are you talking about, the state of Israel? And yet 2 years ago, this was filmed in Bet Knesset Ades. And I don't know, if this video that I'm about to show you doesn't give you goosebumps, then I don't know. Get your pulse checked. Okay, so thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope on Wednesday when you celebrate Yom Haasmaut, you'll have a newfound appreciation for what exactly we are celebrating and what we have to be thankful for every day, but especially on Wednesday. Thank you very much.